What's up everyone, this is Steve from Bloom Audio. Today we have my first review of an OTL headphone amp, the Feliks Audio Euphoria EVO. So the question is, after this, will I ever be able to go back to solid state? Euforia EVO is the long-awaited update to the Feliks Audio Euphoria, which originally came out in 2017. Now, we've reviewed a number of other amps, some of them solid state, some of them hybrid tube or similar technologies, but this is our first time with an OTL or output transformerless tubing. And the idea with the OTL is you're basically shortening the signal path by removing that output transformer and hopefully creating a more natural, organic, and less colored sound so you can get the true characteristics of the tube but maintain that accuracy and transparency. So it almost sounds too good to be true, but does Euforia EVO pull it off? Let's take a closer look. Euforia EVO puts the tubes front and center with this great looking package and this simple brown aluminum chassis here. So you get 4 tubes. Up front you have the drive tubes. Those are 6SN7s, and in the back we've got the 6N13S. So what Feliks provides are, these are 2 sort of Russian, just OTK labeled tubes for the power tubes. And these 2 are Pavan Audio CV181 Golds. You can, of course, swap these out to tweak Euforia EVO's sound, but we didn't test any tube rolling in our time with the amp. In the front of the unit, there's this big, smooth volume knob. It feels great, but my one sort of complaint here is just the way it's labeled is a bit confusing. So you can see here, there's min, and there's the line that you're going up against. So you spin that all the way around here, and now you're at max volume. It can be a little bit hard to read, but for the most part, you're gauging this with your ears and not with your eyes. So it works out pretty well. Flip it around and you've got your on-off switch, your crossfeed switch, your power input, and then your RCAs for input and your RCAs for the output. So the crossfeed is interesting, and we'll talk about this a little more later. It works really well and primarily crosses over the bass frequencies and not all of the frequencies. Overall, I think the best description for this is elegant. It's simple to use, but it's the sort of simplicity that hides a surprising amount of power and versatility. When it comes to amps, talking about the sound signature can be a little bit divisive. In theory, all an amp should do is amplify the signal. And also in theory, it should do so in a linear manner. So that means that you would just amplify it without making any changes to that signal. Now, practically speaking, that's more challenging than it sounds, both in terms of engineering the perfectly linear amp, and in terms of listening, if you actually want to listen to that amp, as some attempts to create a perfectly linear amp have resulted in something that sounds a little bit harsh or brittle. But on the other hand, often amps which go for a colored sound on purpose sort of end up sounding a little bit warm or mushy, or you lose detail in other aspects. So with tubes, and going for that linear sound, you hopefully have the perfect match, where there's a natural sweetness to the sound that comes from a vacuum tube. And if you couple that with a goal of aiming for that perfect linearity, you should kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the accuracy, the transparency, but you also get that little bit of a counterbalance that keeps the sound from going into those more fatiguing territories. In the bass, Euforia EVO is accurate, highly textured, and it gives just the right kind of support for headphones like the HD800 or even the Odyssey MM500 that roll off the bass to some degree. It feels well supported and it ends up not feeling bass light. But on the other hand, with headphones like the Dan Clark Expanse or the Meze Empyrean, which are already warm or have some bass emphasis, it doesn't feel like that emphasis gets pushed up anymore, creating a bloated bass. So it's very well balanced in the way it delivers that extension and that support in the low end. The mid-range is rich and full, very lifelike, natural timbre to it. It really feels like it puts you in the room with this holographic sense of instruments and performers. The treble is accurate and well extended with just this hint of smoothness that rounds out the sharpest peaks of trumpet stab or, saves your ears from an overly enthusiastic coloratura. Euphoria provides an excellent sense of space with a broad three-dimensional soundstage and again, vivid holographic imaging. With the right headphone, an HD800, a Hi-Fi Man HE1000, it just can be positively transportive in the way it just puts you in the room and spreads the performers out. You kind of close your eyes and you can imagine you're right there. While Euphoria EVO doesn't have a lot of features, the crossfeed feature is really solid on here. It's just a single switch, there's no adjustment or anything like that. The way it's designed is, rather than sort of mixing all of both the left and right signals as many crossfeed options do, it primarily mixes the lower frequencies and blends those while leaving the higher frequencies separated still. And what that accomplishes is it gives you a sense of cohesion without breaking that sense of separation. So listening to like the Beatles' White Album, the stereo mix has a really strong sense of positioning of each Beatle and their instrument, but that means that Paul McCartney with his bass is over on the right. And so you're getting more bass on the right side than you are on the left side. And it can be somewhat disorienting and doesn't feel quite right. You flip on the crossfeed, and now it centers the bass without necessarily fully centering Paul McCartney or any of these higher things, the guitars, the cymbals, or anything else. They all kind of remain in place, but it anchors it to the center with the bass, the way that it feeds the right and left together with that. Now, really liked it on a lot of older recordings. Again, a lot of those Beatles remasters, the way those stereo mixes work. I think of a lot of classic rock bands. Cream is another one that comes to mind, where a lot of the classic stereo mix, you've got Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton hard panned against each other. You're going to bring it together, get a little bit more of a sense of centering, but still really feel that separation between the two players. With a lot of more modern music, I felt it could add to the congestion because the way that those albums are mixed and engineered, they've already sort of added that cohesion in the bass and sort of put that kick drum right down the middle and put the bass on top of that in the mix already. So we don't need it there. And it could also be a mixed bag with orchestral recordings, like listening to like Holst, like the Planets, and putting it together. It felt like you lost some of the sense of vastness in the orchestra with the crossfeed on, while you did add some cohesion. So you might just want to experiment with that and see where you like it best. Power output is really good, especially considering the spec says this is 280 milliwatts, which in solid state terms wouldn't get you very far, but because of the difference in the way a tube amp's output, that actually drives a pretty wide range of headphones. Whether it's an LCD5, a Hi-Fi Man Aria, they're going to be great. Wouldn't recommend a Susvara, though some people might have pretty good results with it, depending on your preferences there. Was also surprised with IEMs. Uh, really shockingly low noise floor, listening to a handful of them using, whether a 3.5 to 6.3 millimeter adapter or balanced 4.4 to XLR. I thought it was a surprisingly low noise floor considering you're dealing with a tube amp that's powerful enough to drive all these headphones. So really generally quite versatile product here. Again, the absolute top end of hard to drive headphones aren't going to do as well, but in general, just excellent performance overall. As a guitar player who loves vintage gear, I'd put tubes in just about anything that you could put tubes in. However, the first tube headphone amps I heard were kind of disappointing for me. I felt like, again, they were mushy, they lacked the detail that I was getting, and I kind of stuck with solid state for a while. Euphoria EVO changes that. The level of detail and transparency and accuracy that you get with this, along with, again, that right amount of the sweetness and the smoothness of the tubes, creates nearly perfect sound and one of the best headphone amps I've ever heard. Thanks for watching. You can check out Euphoria EVO and Feliks Audio's complete line at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.